Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
No removals of consent from the agenda? Accommodations or recognitions? Have any? Accommodations, recognitions?
We do have a recognition ceremony, we're gonna do an executive director report, but we can put it out at your pleasure.
Well, you told me that the executive director report, we can do it then. That's okay.
Thank you, sir.
Public comment? Anyone wants to speak from the public? I have some cards here. You have 3 minutes to address the commission on particular items. So we're going to start with Paul, is it Thibault? Thibault. Okay, welcome, sir. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Paul Thibault. I'm with the Sierra Club. I serve on the executive committee of the Sierra Club, and I'm membership chair for this year, Tampa Bay. I'm also on the conservation committee and serve on several committees with the chapter of Florida. Today, I'm here to speak on behalf of Kent Bailey, who you all know probably. He's spoken to you all many times on ecological issues. We are concerned about the Morris Bridge sink issue and the effect that this is going to have on the ecological situation at Lower Hillsborough Wilderness Preserve. SwiftMud says that it's a natural resource conservation, biodiversity are goals of SwiftMud, but Morris Sink is described as a significant ecological feature in that preserve. It will be impacted negatively by removing the water from this sink, and it will affect the wetlands that surround it. There will also be a footprint for the pump, pipe, fencing, will also affect wildlife use. There are 3 isolated wetlands near the Morris Bridge sink, totaling 69 acres. 2 of these wetlands are near pristine condition. SwiftMud's analysis in their pyramid application shows that there will be significant drawdown of the superficial and Florida aquifers under these wetlands. There's a part of their file on page 17 shows the parameters of that drawdown. These drawdowns will also affect the riverine wetlands associated with the Hillsborough River and Cowhouse Creek, which is very close to the south. Along with the Hillsborough River watershed and Green Swamp, the Morris Bridge Sink lies in one of the best remaining wildlife corridors left in this part of the state. It should be given a high level of protection. The recovery strategy proposed by SwiftMud is supposed to result in environmental benefits, not an expansion of adverse environmental impacts. The Tampa Bypass Canal, where there are no potential environmental impacts, is a better source to get the minimum flow of water. And I close with saying that this is a bad idea, and bad ideas should be disposed of in the bad idea bin.
Thank you very much, sir. Next is Mr. Rich Brown. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, thank you very much. Good morning. I represent Friends of the River today, Rich Brown, 1214 Park Circle. Our holiday gift to you is to not have 20 members of the Friends of the River in the audience. We did that to SwiftMud the other day, so. And your staff has an excellent cogent presentation. The executive summary is the damage is real and not needed. The water is not needed for minimum flows. FDEP has 67 counties to take care of. SwiftMud has 13 counties to take care of. You have 1 county to take care of. Nobody knows our county like the people who live, work, play, and lead it. This is our backyard, it's in our house, and EPC, you all, are our protectors. So you'll hear from a lot of folks on why, but please do whatever you can, whenever you can, wherever you can, to make this not happen. Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is John Ovink.
Ovink, yes, good morning. John Ovink, currently at 3025 West Van Buren Drive. in Tampa. I'm a founding member of Friends of the River. I'm also the attorney who filed the administrative lawsuit 16 years ago, and we had to do that because at that time, and I'm going to shed a little history for you here, at that time the river had an arbitrary minimum flow of 10 cubic feet per second, and scientists had come out with a peer review report that said 10 cubic feet per second is not enough. We weren't quite sure how much was enough, but we knew 10 wasn't. So Friends of the River went to court, filed an administrative lawsuit against SwiftMud and City of Tampa, and Thomas Brothers interpled Nestle to determine how much water the river needed. And the judge set us down, and I sat down with Dave Moore from SwiftMud. And on an afternoon, we had to identify which possible sources were going to be needed and might potentially be needed for the Hillsborough River. We didn't even know what the study would bring and how much more fresh water the river would need. So Dave and I identified as many sources as possible, realizing that Morris Bridge might hopefully never be used and was a source of last resort. The fact that Morris Bridge was even identified 16 years ago doesn't mean that it has to be used. But we figured if we leave potential sources out, we can't. So we identified whatever sources there were. Studies have since determined that the river needs between 20 and 24 cubic feet per second of water, fresh water. Studies have also identified, and this is by the lead scientist of SwiftMud, Sid Flannery, that using Morris Bridge water will irreparably damage the Morris Bridge sink and the wetlands around that. The lead scientist of SwiftMud is recommending against the use of Morris Bridge. What we're asking, SwiftMud seems right now determined. What they're saying is, look, Morris Bridge is on the list, you gotta use it. And we're saying, no, you don't have to use it. And we're asking you to do whatever is possible, which right now would seem to be a postponement of this decision so that we can sit down, have a discussion, and see whether we need Morris Bridge. We're asking EPC to make a recommendation to SwiftMud to not make that decision right now, to postpone that decision. Now, at the same time, Friends of the River will go back to court if we have to. We hope we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. This next gentleman, I don't know if we know him that well, Dr. Rick Garrity. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. It's great to be back before you, and thank you for all your good work protecting the environment in Hillsborough County. I had two items I wanted to speak to this morning. One is C1, and that's Morris Bridge, which you've been hearing about. First of all, I'd like to thank Janet and the EPC staff for their justified concerns about impacts to wetlands and private wells from the possibility of pumping nearly 4 million gallons a day from Morris Bridge sink. Since DEP has already issued an intent on the project, what is now needed, as the last speaker said, is some time for a dialogue with DEP and SwiftMud. To do that, DEP needs to issue a 90-day extension before the permit is made final. Some of the things that would need to be reviewed on that permit are whether or not there's actually a need to pump Morris Bridge sink and what are the alternatives to that. Two is that the permit needs to require triggers to curtail pumping when impacts on wetlands or wells are seen, because it doesn't have those triggers right now. Third, it needs to require a mitigation strategy should impacts occur. It doesn't have that either. If DEP does not allow time for this dialogue, the permit may actually have to be challenged. The other item I want to speak to is item D1, and thank you for having that on the agenda today. That's hydraulic fracking. There's two issues with that. The first is the issue of preemption. House Bill 191 and Senate Bill 318 specifically preempt local government regulation of fracking, and then do this even before they're also requiring a $1 million study of fracking. Preemption is bad enough to start with, And worse, when the state acknowledges the need to spend $1 million to even study the issue. Secondly, in addition, EPC policy is to oppose such local preemption attempts. I urge you to oppose the preemption in these two bills. On fracking itself, Central Florida is especially dependent on groundwater as a potable supply, and our aquifers are vulnerable to pollutant sources. There's enough concern over fracking already in Florida that over 50% of our population is represented by local officials who have taken a strong position opposing fracking. Locally, Dr. Lynn Ringenberg, USF College of Medicine Professor Emeritus and past national president of the Physicians of Social Responsibility, has offered to present information on fracking to this board. I strongly recommend you to engage in this exchange of information, learn about PSR's scientific and medical compendium on fracking that put a lot of work and effort into producing this document and providing information to you about this subject. Thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. Appreciate you being here. Next speaker is Clifford, is this Lomstein? Morning.
Good morning. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Okay.
Sir, remember you only have 3 minutes, okay?
Yes, sir. Well, we'll speak to that in.
I just started yet. Wait till you started.
But before, I have a point of order, if I may. I'm representing Mrs. Jeanette Blair from the Little Manatee Isles. And I object to the fact that her item was placed on the consent agenda, because that means if it's a non-controversial item, it doesn't give her any more than these 3 minutes now to challenge it. Okay, but this is the Little Manatee Islands pond history. Okay, here in this park was approved in 1971. Here are the 1971 plans. Here's a 1972 aerial. You see there had this big pond here, and this is the source of our problems, what we're talking about right now, leachate from this pond. In 82, it still hadn't changed. By 94, there was a significant change. The EPC had required them to place a berm over here, and now you see this pond here. This is now a cell that is dry. These 2 cells are being wet. Okay, and they also made some other pond improvements. And then in 2003, you can see the survey of the 3 ponds, and it had a consent order. And that consent order, part of it was to do a pond study. And in 2003, this study, which was submitted to the EPC, concluded that this 30,000 gallon a day plant should only be able to do 28,000 gallons a day. However, a closer study of the numbers revealed that because this is a polishing pond and not per pond, it should have been rated based on this report, 21,300 gallons per day. The EPC never required this plant to be downrated in 2003. It went on. Back. Next. Okay, now these are some actions, improvement actions that you took between 1993 and 2003. The ponds were annually scarified. There was a liner installed along the eastern bank to prevent leachate into a ditch. This pond was located next to a ditch, which caused issues. The pond bottoms were cleaned of sand and spent sludge. Percolation pond was divided into 2 cells at the request of the EPC. They did a pond study, and they had a consent order. They had a consent order since 2001, which has been rolled over 3 times. Every time they renewed the permit, they paid a fee and had the consent order just rolled over again. And tens of thousands of dollars have been spent up to this point, and there's still no solution. And at this point, the owners started getting upset about what was going on because of all the money spent and no solution. Okay, now since 2004, it got a little worse. Okay, but they did continue to make small improvements. The ponds was continued to be scarified. They added 9 floating fountains. They put in individual water meters on certain lots that they thought were causing an issue. The collection system was inspected by camera, but it was not a good inspection. They missed a lot of in just a poor inspection, it's poorly done, they did not see the infiltration. I do not know what happened, why that happened, but it was just done. Yeah, and the Florida Rural Water did smoke tests.
Sir, your time is up. Thank you very much. Commissioner White, you have a question, comment?
Yes, so the subject site is in my district. I think everyone knows that I'm very interested in having a clean, pristine environment in the area around the Little Manatee River. It's also been designated as an outstanding water body by the state of Florida. So it is on the consent agenda, but Ms. Doherty and or Mr. Shantz, can you just give the board just a quick background on the situation there?
Yes, we have a couple people that could address it. It's either Rick Marotti from our legal department who has a legal case, or Sam El Rabi, the director of the water division. I'm not sure which one of them wants to address it.
I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Hold on, before we do this, the item is on the consent agenda. I'm gonna allow someone makes a motion to remove from consent. We're gonna take it up at the end of the agenda.
And before we do that, I would like to say that, you know, if we are seeking authority to file a civil lawsuit. And so the more discussion that the board members have about a civil lawsuit, the more you could be called as a witness. Normally, we just take the input and then you allow staff to go forward and, you know, continue negotiations or file the suit if necessary. We don't automatically run to file the lawsuit if you give us authority today. We still will sit down and talk with the parties. So we have to be careful about how much discussion the board members have about case, so you don't make yourself a witness.
So in your legal opinion, we need to leave it on the consent agenda?
It's my recommendation. But if you'd like to just have us address the general aspect of the case, we could do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm comfortable with leaving it on the consent agenda. I just, in very much general terms, I mean, just a couple of words or a one sentence reply. I mean, the bottom line here is that we're concerned about pollution of the Little Manatee River. Is that
Correct.
fair to say in a nutshell?
Yes, sir.
Discharges eventually into the river.
And that satisfies what I need to know on the record, and I would have no interest in pulling it from consent.
So you want anything from staff at all? You're satisfied?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Everything's fine. All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Last speaker card I have is Pat Kemp. Welcome, Ms. Kemp.
Thank you, Commissioners. Pat Kemp, 5605 Seminole Avenue, Tampa. We're asking this commission to do its part, take responsibility for protecting the Lower Hillsborough Wilderness Preserve. As you have heard so many people here urge you to do today. There are many in stated opposition to this, and we'd like to make sure that you know of them. The City of Temple Terrace has voted to protect the reserve. The River Board, following the recommendation of their Technical Advisory Committee. Sierra Club, as you've heard from already, and I'm here as Sierra Club Conservation Chair. Tampa Bay Times by way of editorial, the Tampa Tribune by way of editorial, the Swamp Club, which is a trail, bike, and river group, and they have named it a regional and international destination, and Friends of the River. So please, if you can recognize that and do it, come forward and take responsibility for protecting this very important natural resource. The river, the area is 13 miles in length. Covers 1/4 of the river's length, and it's mostly the forests and pine flatwoods are managed by the district to promote biodiversity. The wetlands are essential for filtering rainwater before it flows into the river and for storing floodwaters. It's very significant ecologically. It includes a wood store rookery, a sawgrass marsh, and a very important bog and 2 sinkholes. So we're asking for your protection for this very important